Welcome to another lesson of Math 0420 Introductory Algebra. In this video, we will be discussing section 6.3, factoring trinomials whose leading coefficient is not 1. So, in the last section, we factored things that looked like ax squared plus bx plus c, where a equals 1, or x squared plus bx plus c, and a times c was just equal to c. Well, if a is not equal to 1, we just need, to find the factors of a times c that sum to b. Let's try. Example 1. We want to factor 5x squared minus 14x plus 8. So first, we want to find a times c. Well, our a is 5 and our c is 8. So a times c is 5 times 8, which is 40. Okay. So let's look at the factors of 40. And we want to look at the sums. Okay, so because c is positive, that means both factors have the same sign. And since b is negative, they're both negative. So we have negative 1 and negative 40. We have negative 2 and negative 20. Negative 5 and negative 8. And negative 4 and negative 10. Okay, negative 1 plus negative 40 is negative 41. Negative 2 plus negative 20 is negative 22. Negative 5 plus negative 8 is negative 13. And negative 4 plus negative 10 is negative 14. So which pair do we want? Well, we want negative 14. So we want to break up the middle term, negative 14x, into negative 4x and negative 10x. So we do 5x squared minus 14x plus 8 is equal to 5x squared minus 10x minus 4x plus 8. And now we can factor by grouping. So 5x squared and negative 10x, what do they have in common? Well, they have a 5x in common. 5x times x is 5x squared, and 5x times negative 2 is negative 10x. Now let's look at the second two terms, negative 4x plus 8. What do they have in common? Well, they have a negative 4 in common. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x, and negative 4 times negative 2 is 8. And since we have the common binomial factor x minus 2, we can rewrite this as 5x minus 4 times x minus 2. And that's fully factored. Let's go back and talk about the steps for factoring. Steps for factoring ax squared plus bx plus c using grouping when a is not equal to 1. Step 1. Multiply the leading coefficient. A by the constant c. Then Find the factors of A times C whose sum is B. Step 3. Rewrite the middle term, bx, as a sum or difference using the factors in step 2. And finally, factor by grouping. Example 2. We want to factor 3x squared minus x minus 10. So the first thing we want to find is A times C. And A is 3, C is negative 10, so our A times C is negative 30. And so we'll want to find factors of that and then find sums. Okay. So our C is negative. That means one of our factors is negative and one is positive. Our B is negative, so the bigger factor is negative. So we have 1 and negative 30, 2 and negative 15, 3 and negative 10, and 5 and negative 6. When we add those together, 1 plus negative 30 is negative 29. 2 plus negative 15 is negative 13. 3 plus negative 10 is negative 7. And 5 plus negative 6 is negative 1. Notice our middle term is negative 1x, so the pair we want is 5 and negative 6. So we can rewrite 3x squared minus x minus 10 and break up that middle term, negative x, as 3x squared minus 6x plus 5x minus 10. Looking at 3x squared and minus 6x, they have a 3x in common, and we're left with x minus 2. If we look at 5x and negative 10, they have a 5 in common. 5 times x is 5x, and 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. We now have a common binomial factor of x minus 2, so we're left with x minus 2 times 3x plus 5, and that is our example 3. We want to factor 8x squared minus 10x plus 3. Our A times C in this case is 8 times 3, which is 24. So we want to find the factors of A times C equal to 24 that sum up to give us negative 10. Since the 3, our C, is positive, both of our factors either have to be positive or negative. Since our B is negative 10, both factors have to be negative. So we have negative 1, negative 24, negative 2 and negative 12, negative 3 and negative 8, and negative 4 and negative 6. All of those are factors of 24. So we add together our pairs. Negative 1 plus negative 24 is negative 25. Negative 2 plus negative 12 is negative 14. Negative 3 plus negative 8 is negative 11. And negative 4 plus negative 6 is negative 10. So the last one is the set that we want. And so we can break up the middle term, negative 10x, into negative 4x and negative 6x. So we have 8x squared minus 10x plus 3 equals 8x squared minus 4x minus 6x plus 3. The 8x squared and 4x have a 4x in common. So we have 2x minus 1. And the negative 6x and the 3 have a negative 3 in common. And so that's 2x minus 1 again. We have a common binomial factor of 2x minus 1. And so we have 2x minus 1 times 4x minus 3. Example 4. We want to factor completely 5y to the fourth plus 13y cubed plus 6y squared. Anytime you see factor completely, that probably means that you're not going to be able to factor it immediately without trying to factor out a GCF. So what is our greatest common factor of these three terms? Well, we have a y to the fourth, a y to the third, and a y squared. Our smallest is y squared. 5, 13, and 6 have no common factors because 13 is prime. So our GCF is y squared. So we can go from here, and say that's equal to y squared times 5y squared. Y squared times 13y gives us 13y cubed, and 6 times y squared gives us 6y squared. Okay, so now we want to factor this inside part, and so we can multiply together our 5 and 6. So factors of AC equal to 5 times 6, which is 30. And then the sums. So we have C is 6, which is positive, so both factors have to have the same sign. Our B is 13, which is positive, so both factors are positive, so 1 and 30. 2 times 15, 3 times 10, and 5 times 6. Okay, 1 plus 30 is 31, 2 plus 15 is 17, 3 plus 10 is 13, and 5 plus 6 is 11. So we want the 3 plus 10. So we can break up that middle term. So that's y squared times 5y squared plus 10y plus 3y plus 6. Now notice that I chose to put the 10y first when I broke that up because I want it to work with the 5y squared. We want that grouping. So what we can do, we'll keep our GCF hanging around, and we have a common factor between 5y squared and 10y of 5y. That leaves y plus 2. And then now we can look at the second group, 3y and 6. 3y and 6 have a 3 in common, and we're left with y plus 2, because 3 times 2 is 6. And now we have a common binomial factor of y plus 2, so we get y squared times y plus 2 times 5y plus 3. And that is our fully factored form. That is also the conclusion of section 6.3, factoring trinomials whose leading coefficient is not 1. Good luck on your